15 years ago, in the heart of a bustling city, I found myself in my very first apartment. It was a small bachelor pad tucked away in a sketchy part of town, but I was young and eager to start my life on my own terms. Growing up in a rough neighborhood, I learned early on to keep my head down and avoid trouble at all costs. But nothing could prepare me for what was about to unfold in that dingy apartment building behind the bar. It was a typical evening when I returned home from work, passing by the bar where the patrons lingered outside, puffing on their cigarettes. Among them stood a towering figure, his eyes locked onto mine with an intensity that sent shivers down my spine. I offered a polite nod as I passed, but his gaze never wavered, burning into me like a branding iron. Unease settled in the pit of my stomach, but I brushed it off and continued on my way. Hours passed, the evening descending into a quiet stillness. But then, a knock echoed through the silence, sending a jolt of fear coursing through my veins. Visitors were a rarity in that building, and I hesitated, my hand hovering over the doorknob. "Who is it?" I called out, my voice betraying my nerves. "It's Tom," came the reply, a voice tinged with malice. I didn't know anyone named Tom, and instinct screamed at me to keep the door shut. But curiosity got the better of me, and I peered through the peephole, my heart hammering in my chest. There, on the other side, stood the tall man from the bar, his features contorted into a sinister grin. My blood ran cold as I recoiled from the door, my mind racing with fear. "Get lost!" I shouted, my voice trembling with anger. "I'm calling the cops!" The man's laughter echoed through the hallway as he retreated, disappearing into the night. I breathed a sigh of relief, thinking the ordeal was over. But I was wrong. Minutes later, I caught sight of him from my window, lurking in the shadows of the parking lot. He muttered to himself, his words lost on the wind, sending a chill down my spine. Panicked, I called my landlord, desperate for help. He urged me to contact the police while he and his brother investigated the situation. As I waited for the authorities to arrive, I watched from my window as my landlord and his brother confronted the man. But before they could intervene, he vanished into the darkness, slipping through their fingers like smoke. When the police finally arrived, I recounted the events of the evening, my hands shaking as I described the man's menacing presence. The officer's expression turned grave as he listened, confirming my worst fears. "It's a good thing you didn't answer the door," he said, his voice grave. "We've had reports of a man matching that description assaulting women in the area." Days later, I received a call from the officer, informing me that the man had been apprehended. As part of their investigation, they had uncovered a trail of violence and terror left in his wake. It was a chilling reminder of the dangers that lurked in the shadows, unseen and unknown until it was too late. And as I reflected on that harrowing night, I vowed never to underestimate the darkness that dwelled within the human heart. Working the overnight shift at the gas station was never glamorous. It was just me, the clerk, surrounded by the hum of fluorescent lights and the occasional buzz of the soda fridge. Located on the outskirts of town, the station was a lone beacon of light amidst the darkness, drawing in weary travelers and late-night drivers. Most nights passed without incident. The flow of customers dwindled to a trickle after midnight, leaving me alone with my thoughts and the soft whirring of the coffee machine. But there was one night that shattered the quiet monotony and left me questioning everything. It was around 2 a.m., the witching hour, when the white van pulled into the parking lot. I watched it through the window, a knot of unease forming in my stomach. There was something off about that van, something sinister lurking beneath its innocuous exterior. As the van parked in one of the spaces, I couldn't shake the feeling of dread that washed over me. I had a bad feeling about this, a sinking sensation that clawed at the edges of my consciousness. For a while, nothing happened. The van just sat there, a silent sentinel in the dead of night. But then, the door creaked open, and a figure emerged from within. It was him, the same man from before, his face obscured by the darkness of his hood. I watched as he made his way towards the entrance, his movements slow and deliberate. My heart pounded in my chest as he disappeared inside, leaving me alone with my fear. Minutes stretched into eternity as I waited, the silence broken only by the faint ticking of the clock above the register. And then, I heard it, a loud crash, followed by the sound of splintering wood. My blood ran cold as I realized what was happening. The man was inside the store, wreaking havoc with his crowbar. I didn't dare to move, paralyzed by a terror unlike anything I had ever known. But then, instinct kicked in, and I knew I had to get out of there. Without a second thought, I bolted from behind the counter and fled into the night, the echoes of destruction ringing in my ears. I made it to my car, hands trembling as I fumbled for my phone. With shaking fingers, I dialed 911, my voice frantic as I relayed the events unfolding before me. As I waited for the police to arrive, I watched from the safety of my car, the glow of the gas station casting long shadows across the empty parking lot. Minutes passed like hours, each second stretching out into eternity. And then, finally, the man emerged from the store, his form illuminated by the harsh glare of the streetlights. With a sense of relief, I watched as he climbed back into his van and drove away into the night. When the police arrived, we combed through the wreckage left in the man's wake, the shattered remnants of shelves and displays strewn across the floor. But there was no sign of him, no clue as to his identity or his motives. In the days that followed, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease that lingered in the air. Who was that man, and what did he want? I may never know the answers to those questions, but one thing was for certain: I was done with that job, done with the gas station and its haunted halls. As I drove away from that place for the last time, I couldn't help but feel a sense of relief wash over me. I may never forget what happened that night, but I was determined to leave it behind me, a distant memory in the rearview mirror of my life. The hospital where I work now is nothing like the ones I've been in before. It's nestled in the heart of a bustling metropolis, far removed from the quiet suburbs I once knew. I've been here for a few months now, navigating the maze of hallways and corridors, tending to patients with a mix of familiarity and trepidation. Tonight, like many nights before, I find myself on the graveyard shift. The clock ticks past midnight as I make my rounds, the dim lights casting long shadows down the halls. I'm assigned to the neurology wing, where patients with various neurological disorders reside. It's a challenging ward, but I've grown accustomed to the sights and sounds of this place. Among the patients is Mr. Thompson, an elderly man with advanced dementia. He spends most of his days lost in his own world, muttering incomprehensible words to himself. Tonight, however, there's a sense of unease in the air. Mr. Thompson keeps glancing nervously at the corner of his room, his eyes wide with fear. I approach him, offering a reassuring smile. "Everything okay, Mr. Thompson?" I ask, though I already know the answer. He shakes his head, his voice trembling. "The shadows, they're watching me," he whispers hoarsely. "Can't you see them?" I glance at the corner he's pointing to, but there's nothing there except darkness. Still, I can't shake the feeling of being watched, as if invisible eyes are peering into my soul. I try to calm Mr. Thompson down, assuring him that there's nothing to fear. But deep down, I'm beginning to doubt my own words. There's something sinister lurking in the shadows tonight, something that defies explanation. As the night wears on, the atmosphere grows increasingly oppressive. Strange noises echo through the halls, sending shivers down my spine. I catch glimpses of movement out of the corner of my eye, fleeting shapes darting in and out of sight. I try to dismiss it as my imagination running wild, but deep down, I know there's something else at play here. Something malevolent, something shapeless and formless, lurking in the darkness. And then it happens. I'm making my rounds, checking on patients in their rooms, when I feel it, a cold, clammy hand on my shoulder. I freeze, my heart pounding in my chest, as a wave of terror washes over me. I turn around, expecting to see a fellow nurse or maybe a wandering patient. But there's no one there. Just an empty hallway, bathed in the sickly glow of the overhead lights. I try to shake off the feeling of dread that grips me, telling myself it's just my overactive imagination. But then I see him, the man in black, standing at the end of the hallway, his eyes gleaming with malicious intent. I want to scream, to run, to flee from this nightmare come to life. But my body refuses to move, rooted to the spot by some unseen force. And then he's gone, vanished into thin air like a wisp of smoke. But his presence lingers, a palpable sense of dread that hangs heavy in the air. I stumble back to the nurse's station, my hands trembling as I try to compose myself. But I know I can't stay here, not with that thing out there, lurking in the darkness. I request a transfer to a different ward, far away from the neurology wing and its haunted halls. And when my shift finally comes to an end, I flee from the hospital like a bat out of hell, vowing never to return. But the memory of that night haunts me still, a lingering specter of fear and uncertainty. And as I lie awake in bed, staring into the darkness, I can't shake the feeling that something is watching me, waiting for the perfect moment to strike.